Okay.
Just waiting for that to go around. Yeah, they'll come.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and a belated Happy New Year to everyone watching or in the meeting. This is the Planning Committee meeting of the Vale of Glamorgan Council on Thursday, the 15th of January 2026 at 4 p.m. Excuse me. May I remind everyone present this hybrid meeting of the Planning Committee is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please raise their hand in person if they're sat in the chamber, or use the remote raise hand function. If a participant raises their hand via the remote function and is not subsequently invited to speak by myself, could they turn the camera on to indicate or place a message in the chat function? When invited to address by me, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is then on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. If this is not possible for any reason, please bring this to the attention of myself or the Democratic Services Officer as soon as possible. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function. For the sake of the recording, the chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and or to grab the attention of myself or the Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they're addressing the committee, then they should let the chair, myself or Democratic Officer know. So please could I welcome all committee and non-committee elected members, our officers, public speakers, residents, and also to anyone watching the live meeting broadcast. So, moving swiftly on, apologies for absence, please.
I've not had any come through to me as yet, Chair, so obviously members have opportunity to raise them now.
Councillor Aviett?
Yes, I think Helen might be having problems getting on for a minute, but she should be here very soon.
Thank you. Minutes of the meeting, agenda item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of October 2025. Can we agree this as a true record?
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. I see no hands. That's carried. Agenda item 3, to receive declarations of interest and the nature of such interests under the Council's Code of Conduct, including whipping declarations. Are there any declarations of interest? I see no hands, so I assume there aren't. Agenda item 4, building reg applications and other building control matters determined by the Director under delegated powers. These are for noting.
Happy to note, Chair.
Right. Again, I see no hands, so I'm assuming that's okay. Agenda item 5, planning applications determined by the Director under delegated powers. Again, I believe these are for noting.
Happy to note, Chair.
And again, I see nobody indicating opposition, so that's carried. Agenda item 6, appeals. Liam, can you take us through these, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there's a few appeal decisions in the report. I'm not going to go through each one and in any detail, but as you can see in the report, there's 5 appeal decisions there from the last few weeks, and they've all been dismissed, so that's good in terms of outcomes. You'll see the report on page 31. That looks back from April 2025, so obviously we monitor our performance on appeals. You can see 76% of all appeals have been dismissed and then 24% allowed. So that's 19 to 6. So it's pleasing in terms of overall performance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Liam. Are there any questions or queries on that? In that case, thank you, Liam. Maybe note.
Happy to note, Chair.
We come now on to agenda item 7, trees. There's the delegated list, which is for noting, and Unless I see any hands up in opposition, then I move we note.
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you. And then within trees, we have this item, application 2025/00007, Boverton Castle. And I'm trying to remember who's taking us through that. I think, is that you, Liam?
It's me, Chair.
It's Rob.
That's
Thank
me.
you.
I'm doing this one. That's right. Okay. Can I have the slides, please? Okay. So just to begin with, so application 2025/00892/TCA was submitted to notify the Council of intended works to an individual sycamore tree within the Boverton Conservation Area that sits within the car park of the Boverton Castle pub, the location of which is shown on the plan before you. As you can also see, it's on the boundary line with the neighbouring property, Hazel Bungalow. The request was made to fell the tree due to damage to the boundary wall, which is claimed to be caused by the sycamore tree. During the application, the tree was found by officers to be in good condition and to contribute significantly to the wider public realm, including the host conservation area, noting its visibility and scale and the pleasing verdancy it provides, particularly when in leaf. I think there's a couple of photos we could possibly offer on the next slide, please. So these are a couple of slides, just or photos showing, so that's the tree when viewed from the pub garden itself. One close up showing the stem and its relationship to the wall on the right hand side, and there just generally showing its kind of shape and the size of the canopy. So, and that's another one, sorry, I forgot this photo was there, just showing it from the other side within the boundary of the neighbouring property, Hazel Bungalow, sorry, and just showing it in relation to the wall. You can just see a small level of a gap in the wall that has, where the wall has fallen away. So noting its kind of positive contribution to the conservation area in the absence and the lack of any supporting information, the TCA application was refused and the tree considered worthy of protection by way of tree preservation order. To this end, a tree preservation order was served on interested parties and the tree put under interim protection to allow sufficient time for any consultation responses to be received. As part of the TPO confirmation process, objections have subsequently been received from neighbouring properties, Hazel Bungalow and Pencley Cottage, due to the tree being specified as posing a risk and danger to the boundary wall and the public. A structural survey was submitted in support of the application of the subsequent representations against the confirmation of the TPO by the applicant, that notes that whilst the wall is at risk of local collapse with associated health and safety risks, the survey notes that having assessed and considered a number of options, including the protection of the tree, the most appropriate one was to retain the tree, demolishing the section of damaged stonework wall and rebuilding as per the existing stonework construction. Noting this, whilst the concerns within the representations are noted, given the officer's evaluation and the findings of the submitted structural report, it was found that the contribution the tree makes to the conservation area it was found to be correct, and that there was an alternative to removing the tree, which would have had to be done anyway, including basically the repair of the existing stone wall. As such, it's recommended that members should move to confirm the tree preservation order without modification. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. That's it. Yeah, thank you, Rob. Are there any questions or any comments from members of the committee? In that case, the officer's recommendation is to confirm introducing the TPO on this tree, the tree preservation order on this tree. I can't remember what the numbers were. They're here somewhere. But given that, any members in opposition to confirming the TPO, given the report of the applicants, the people the applicants employed to do a survey that suggests that the tree is worthy of retention and that the wall can be rebuilt as is. I see no hands up, therefore I take that as agreement. So the TPO is agreed. We now come on to the planning applications. There are a number of matters arising that have actually come in quite late to us this afternoon, but and they are considerable in volume and bulk. I mean, I've got them run off here. Due to that, the first, before I start that, the Gileston Manor one, which we have on our agenda, has been withdrawn by the applicants. So we won't be discussing that this afternoon. So we start with Berth 31, 2024 /00959 FUL. The bulk of the matters arising that have come to us are about this particular application, and they are very, very detailed and complicated, and the officers require more time to address the matters arising within those representations, and therefore I propose that we further defer this matter to a future meeting.
And I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any comments or questions on that? I see no comments or questions. In that case, I take that as agreement from members. So we will therefore defer that matter to a future meeting, giving officers time to address all the issues raised. We then can now move on to, I'd like to thank those members of the public who registered to speak on that matter, but I look forward to seeing you at a future meeting. Just give them time to leave. Councillor Bruce?
My apologies. Did you say that the Gileston one has been removed? I didn't quite catch it.
Yes, the Gileston Manor, the applicants have withdrawn the application.
That's what I thought you said. No, my apologies. Thank you.
So, moving on. The next item on the agenda is 2021 00290 FUL Land at Sigingstone. We have matters arising that have been drawn to our attention within the package that was sent out earlier. We also have, I think, we have 3 registered speakers on this. One of whom I think is in the chamber, and I'm trying to find my list and what I've done with it. Oh, it's been nicked. Is it all right? So first it's the introduction, isn't it? It's the introduction first, isn't it? So we'll start with the officer who is going to talk to this, and that's Rob Lancashire, please.
Yeah, it's me again. Okay, cover slides, please. Thank you. Next slide, just the first one. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. So the site is a field parcel to the southwest of the village of Sigingstone. The site is located adjacent to, but outside of the boundary of, the minor rural settlement of Sigingstone, as identified by the LDP, and is therefore located in the countryside. The application as amended is for a residential development of 10 affordable dwellings and ancillary development, including landscaping, open space, drainage works, car parking, and a new vehicular access. Might be next slide, please, if we can. There we go. So that's the general layout as before you. So you can see the access would be from the east on the road running into the village there, with dwellings to the north and to the east. The dwellings have been set back behind the kind of principal route of access into it, and an area of open space to the northeast of the site, where there are a number of protected trees. yes, and basically orientated in an east-west direction, so they address the circulation space within the site, but also in a more general sense, the dwellings to the east of the site as well. The proposed dwellings are predominantly two-storey units, the exception being the bungalow unit proposed at plot number 6. Liam, I think if we can have the next slide, please. Sorry, it's for Liam directing. Yes, so here's a street scene view of the development at the bottom there, which gives a general feel of the design of the units, showing the predominant materials being kind of grey slate roofs with render walls beneath. Being fairly traditional in terms of their general design and in a material palette which replicates those found within Sigingstone itself. The officer's report provides a detailed appraisal of the salient planning matters, including but not limited to the principle of residential development in this location, the visual impact, highway safety, amenity of neighbouring residential properties, ecology and archaeological constraints, amongst others. In terms of the principle, it's acknowledged that the site sits outside of a defined settlement boundary identified within the LDP, but is adjacent to the settlement boundary of Sigingstone, as I noted before. Planning Policy Wales, Technical Advice Note 2, and the Local Development Plan allow for the provision of affordable housing exception sites, with relevant policy of the LDP being Policy MD10. This policy allows for small-scale affordable housing development defined by the policy as up to 10 dwellings in most cases, where they have physical or visual links with an existing settlement, subject to a number of further criteria. As noted before, it's considered that the site relates well to the existing village, albeit it is an existing field parcel. You know, there is clearly development to both the north and the east of the site. And you know, as I noted before, they've been orientated to address the road. The officer report prepared for members' attention provides a detailed appraisal against all the relevant policies. However, in summary, against the criteria of policy MD10, it is noted there is an identified need for affordable housing provision within the ward that will be met by this development that cannot be met within settlement boundaries. Furthermore, the size of units would assist in addressing the need identified by the council housing section within the ward itself. The addition of 10 dwellings to the village of Sigingstone is compared to be proportionate to the circa kind of 50 dwellings existing within the village. The proposed layout, density and design of the units is considered to respond well to the existing pattern of development. The development is proposed by New of Housing Association, one of the authority's registered social landlords. Lastly, the site adjoins a minor rural settlement identified within the LDP, with one objective identified within the settlement hierarchy to provide an appropriate level, range and choice of housing, including affordable housing need to meet local need rather. The LDP identifies the need for some moderate growth in minor rural settlements such as Sigingstone, including to assist in meeting that need, basically. Future occupiers would benefit from local facilities within the village, including the village pub, whilst there are existing school transport facilities to serve households with children, amongst other things. Although not benefiting from the full range of facilities one may expect within a larger settlements, consider this needs to be balanced against the local need for affordable housing across in the ward and across the Vale. Indeed, the Affordable Housing SPG, which was revised last year, states in paragraph 9.1.2 that within smaller rural communities where it normally be appropriate to develop housing because of limited, where it not normally be appropriate to develop housing because of limited availability of facilities and services, there may be circumstances where the provision of housing to meet a local need outweighs these factors. Overall, in considering all of the aforementioned criteria and those within the officer report, and the need within the ward and neighbouring wards, is considered proposals are compliant with the aims and objectives of policy MD10 and related national guidance in terms of PPW and TAN 2. In terms of other matters, I'll give a very swift run through of a couple of those more slightly sensitive ones. In terms of ecology, the proposal has been subject to significant consultation with Natural Resources Wales and the council ecologist that considered, amongst other things, the presence of dormice, bats and potential great crested newts. As per the officer report, there is no outstanding objection remaining, subject to suitable conditions being attached to any planning permission, including a dormouse conservation plan and conditions that require translocation of existing and provision of additional hedgerow and trees, and a scheme of biodiversity enhancement. As such, is not considered to be an ecological reason why planning permission should not be granted. It is noted that circa 4 TPO trees are indicated to be removed to provide access to the site to the east. This is regrettable. However, it's required to provide safe access to this particular site. And in terms of mitigation and compliance with the requirements of the stepwise approach of Planning Policy Wales, circa 30 trees are proposed to be planted within the site, which are proposed to be native trees, which far exceeds the 3-for-1 replacement requirement by PPW. In terms of representations, it's noted that a number of raised concerns with regard to drainage facilities at the site. It is, however, noted that Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water and Natural Resources Wales have raised no objection with regard to proposed foul arrangement at the site. Similarly, those undertakers and the council's drainage section haven't raised any objection in terms of surface water matters, noting that the drainage section detail that this can be dealt with through a relevant SAB application in the future. Noting all of the above and that contained within the officer report, it's officer's recommendation that the application should be approved. Members should note the recommendation is subject to confirmation from the Welsh ministers. They do not wish to call in the application, noting they issued a holding objection a few years ago when the application originally came in. That's everything from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Right, as I indicated earlier, we have a number of speakers. We have 3 speakers on this matter. The first being Mr. Paul Thomas, who's an objector to the application and is here in person. Mr. Thomas, you have 3 minutes from the moment you start speaking.
Can I just say, I'm struggling to hear you, so I'm having to speak to you or listen through the earpiece.
Okay, I don't know why. I shall move the mic nearer. How's that? In that case, Mr. Thomas, you have 3 minutes from the moment you start speaking.
Do I turn this on? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, councillors. My name is Paul Thomas. I have lived in Sigingstone for over 60 years. My home is a Vale of Glamorgan listed county treasure. The officer's report claims Sigingstone has reasonable connectivity and service provision based on access to a community hall, a hotel and a pub. The reality of living in Sigingstone is there is no hotel. We don't have a bus service. The nearest bus stop is over 1.5 miles away. We don't have a shop. The village hall seats 20 people. It cannot serve the existing community, let alone 41 more residents. Policy MD10 requires that all 5 criteria are met, but 3 criteria are not met. Criteria 1, there is no village-specific housing need identified. There is only ward-level data available. 51 affordable units have already been built in the ward since 2019. This already exceeds the stated 15-year need of 28 units. On criteria 2, a 54% population increase is not really proportionate for a community of this size. The officer admits that this is at the upper end of the scale. And on criteria 5, with access to services, this is clearly not met because the village doesn't have the required services. And if one criteria fails, the application should be refused. Affordable housing should serve the people who live in it. Placing families on limited incomes in a village with no facility fails them. This is the wrong site for the people this housing is supposed to help. There is no main sewerage in Sigingstone. The applicant proposes a packaged treatment plant with a drainage mound for the treated sewage to soak into the ground, into the ground. But their own site investigation report says that there is no vertical permeability in the ground. The treated sewage won't soak into the ground. Instead, it will flow into the adjacent storm drain, which is dry for most of the year. NRW's regulations do not permit this. A shared treatment plant is recognised as being totally unsuitable for affordable housing. If this treatment plant fails, raw sewage will pollute the village stream. The critical question of how sewage will actually be dealt has been left for NRW to resolve later. You are being asked to approve this application without this significant issue being resolved. Flooding. I've watched water pour off this field and flood the lanes of our village for decades. I have photographs of flood water backing up into the village pond and flowing up against the walls of my property. The council's own drainage section asked for a flood consequences assessment. The officer decided it wasn't required. I am seriously worried that this development will increase water runoff and flood my home.
Sorry, Mr. Thomas, your time.
I have lived in this village my entire life. It simply does not make sense to approve a development of this scale in a village without mains drainage. Please reject this application.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. If you just stay there for a moment, while I see if there are any members of the committee who have any points of clarification they would like to raise based on what you've said. Does anyone have any points of clarification? Councillor Buckley, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Thomas. You said that NRW, the drainage for this site goes against NRW's own procedures. However, in the information we got today and the previous stuff, NRW haven't raised any concerns regarding this development. So I don't know if you could clarify where you got your information from, please.
Yeah, sorry, I getting feedback. The information that we have is that wastewater coming out of this plant will end up in the storm drain. As far as I'm aware, NRW haven't visited the site. They've been asked to look at it. The documentation that I've seen is that they would consider it when an application is actually put in for the relevant treatment plant. This has been deferred rather than really looking at the intricate design of the plant, where the runoff water is going to go, how it's going to be disposed of. This is basically been put off for a future assessment, and I don't feel that you can make a decision without having a firm, clear solution to the treatment of sewerage, and it just doesn't make sense.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a question in respect of the length of time that you've been in the village and some of the comments you made about the 5 criteria that have to be met here, in particular the criteria of we have to have evidence of a need within the village for this development to be legally acceptable. So you've lived in the village for over 60 years, and I just want to ask, do you know, or have you ever heard in the last 5 years of anyone in the village or the surrounding villages, because I guess you've lived there for 60 years and you know a lot of people, have you ever heard of anybody that says that they require housing in the village that cannot be met?
No, I mean, the only requirement that I've known in the past is that a local farmer's son required, to live in the village to support the farm, and he moved into his deceased grandmother's house. So that met the required need. There's also one property up for sale at the moment that I would regard as being on the lower cost bracket. It's been on the market for 6 to 9 months. I feel that if there was a high need for someone to live in the village, that property would have had a lot more attention and a lot more offers on it, and it's had no offers at all. So no, I'm not aware of any.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Councillor Payne, sorry, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I'm just interested in one of the things you said about people with limited outcomes. Can I just ask you what you meant?
What I was referring to was that I understood that these properties are for people on lower income. My understanding that these are meant to be of affordable properties. So my understanding of affordable properties is that they should provide housing for families and people who don't have multiple cars to be able to pop down to Cowbridge or Llantrip Major to do the shopping. So that's what I meant.
Thank you very much.
Right, well, I don't agree. As somebody who grew up in a council house, it didn't limit my outcomes. It did not limit my options. So I just wanted to clarify, that is what I thought you meant. So thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Stallard.
Hello, Mr. Thomas, and hello, everyone else. I'd just like to know what happens to the sewage generated by the existing properties in the village?
The existing properties have what are called cesspits. They are storage tanks. So each property is responsible for its own storage tank. They are responsible for checking the levels on it, making sure that it doesn't leak, and making sure that it gets emptied on a regular basis. So every household is responsible for their own property, and if they don't do that proper maintenance and monitoring, then they are subject, to prosecution when there's any pollution events. The issue with this group of affordable housing using a shared package plant that is going to be managed by the housing association is that the individual houses are not going to be responsible or even be really aware that that package plant is there. These package plants, you can't, people are used to chucking sanitary products, anything, wet wipes down their toilets, and these type of plants are very susceptible to, you can't put bleach down them and so on because it affects the way the plant works. Any plant like that where it's managed by an individual property, they are ultimately responsible for it. These properties, they're not even going to be responsible for what they're chucking down the toilets, but it will have an effect.
Mr. Thomas, you're into speculation now rather than answering the question. Thank you. Councillor Payne, your hand is still up. Is that a legacy hand or do you
Can I come back as well?
Oh, well, first of all, Councillor Stallard, yes, you can come back if you wish, but it should be on points of clarification.
Quickly. Yes. Oh, I was just going to say, I presume that the Housing Association would take a certain responsibility and they will provide guidance.
That can be part of the discussion when we get to that part of the
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more points of clarification for Mr. Thomas? I see no hands. You can turn your mic off now. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Our next speaker is Sarah Brewer, who is a town and community councillor. If you can come on screen, Sarah. And you have 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, my name's Councillor Sarah Brewer, and I'm one of the Land Out Community Council members for Sigingstone. The Landau Community Council has objected to this proposal in multiple correspondences for reasons which have been comprehensively documented in the address of Paul Thomas. Sigingstone residents have held public meetings regarding the application, and it is clear that Mr. Thomas represents the collective position. In support of those residents, and to avoid repetition today, I confirm on behalf of Landau Community Council that its very significant concerns are fully reflected in Mr. Thomas's submission, and that it is considered accordingly. It only remains for me to respectfully ask the Planning Committee to comply with its own stated policy and reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Sarah. Are there any points of clarification from any members of the committee as to what Sarah has raised? I see no hands. In that case, we move on to the third and final speaker, who is Mrs. Catherine Blythe, who is speaking on behalf of the applicant or the representative. Can you come on screen? Mrs. Blythe, you have 3 minutes from the time you start speaking.
Thank you. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am addressing you as planning agent on behalf of the applicant. Members will be aware that the Vale of Glamorgan, like many authorities across Wales, faces a significant need for affordable housing. Policy SP4 of the adopted local development plan identifies affordable housing as a key strategic priority. This is reinforced by planning policy at the national level, which places strong emphasis on meeting local housing needs, particularly in rural areas, where affordability pressures are often most acute. In this context, the application before you is of particular importance. The proposal delivers 100% affordable housing, providing 10 affordable homes in a location where local need is identified. The officer's report references the up-to-date Homes for You waiting list data, which provides evidence of local need within the ward. Members will note that this is a rural affordable housing exception site, assessed carefully against policy MD10. Officers are satisfied that the development meets the relevant policy tests, including the scale of development, mix of units, and long-term retention of the homes as affordable housing in perpetuity. Importantly, the scheme has been amended during the application process, reducing the number of units from 15 to 10. The resulting layout, density, and design are considered by officers to strike an appropriate balance between meeting housing need and respecting the character of Sigingstone and its rural setting. Officers also confirm that technical matters, including highways, drainage, ecology, and residential amenity, have been thoroughly assessed, and no technical consultee raises an objection to the scheme as now proposed. The provision of 10 affordable homes, suitable for families, couples, and smaller households alike, will support the vitality and long-term sustainability of the local community. The scheme is directly aligned with the Council's housing and wellbeing objectives, and officers conclude these benefits are not outweighed by any residual impacts. In closing, this is a proposal that is firmly grounded in adopted policy, supported by evidence of need and endorsed by officers. I would respectfully encourage members to support the recommendation before you and resolve to grant planning permission subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Just want to check whether there's any members of the committee who have any points of clarification for the speaker. Councillor Ernest, do you have your hand up?
Yes, good afternoon, Ms. Blythe. You say in your presentation that the local need in Sigingstone is for 10 units. Can you confirm that there is actually a need for 10 units in Sigingstone, or are you looking at the wider area of the Vale where there may well be a need for 10 units? Thank you.
Catherine, do you want to respond to that, please?
Hi. Yes, sorry. So, yeah, I'm referring then to the council's own Homes for You waiting list, which is the data which is used to evidence need. So that most up-to-date version of the waiting list does identify 28 local people or families who are registered currently on the waiting list for affordable homes within the ward.
Thank you, Catherine.
So if I can just come back then, you're saying within the ward there are 28 identifiable families?
Yes, as referenced within the officer's report, that is the identified need.
Thank you very much, Ms. Blythe.
Thank you. Are there any other points of clarification that from members of the committee?
Catherine wants to speak. She's Christine Kane.
Christine. Is this a point of clarification, Christine?
Okay, fine.
Okay. Leave that then.
Okay.
We focused a lot on whether there is evidence of need, and I'm not at this very point in time convinced that there is. I think 28 in the ward is a broad brush to be able to say that we need 10 units in Sigingstone. But my point of clarification here is in respect of the actual site itself. Could you tell me why this site in particular, you know, which is currently a greenfield site with cows on it, is farmed, why this site outside of the curtilage of the village has been particularly...
Councillor Cave, this isn't a point of clarification based on what Ms Blythe said. This is a... she didn't raise this.
Okay.
You can raise this in the debate. You can raise this in the debate with officers.
Yes. But it is a point, isn't it? That, you know,
you can raise it within the debate with officers. There being no other points of clarification, thank you, Ms Blythe, for your time.
Thank you.
And we'll move back first of all to Rob. Rob Lancashire, whether you have any matters to address from the points that have been raised so far.
Yeah, just a quick one, just with regard to the foul drainage. Noting there was some concern about the kind of kicking in the can down the road, so to speak. NRW have been consulted on it. They are the permitting authority for such facilities. They've raised no objection with regard to it. There are no mains drainage facilities within the area. So it follows the advice within the relevant circular, which I think is number 8 from 2018. And in terms of the kind of management and responsibility of it, I would imagine that would fall squarely within the housing association's remit. I mean, these are social rented units, so they have a responsibility to manage and maintain them on behalf of their of the occupiers. So I would say that in the first instance, just with regard to the foul drainage. In terms of one point, I just wanted to clarify in terms of the lack of the flood consequences assessment. It's not a requirement by legislation under the relevant TAN 15, which is assessed against, and that is covered in the matters arising and within the officer report. So I just wanted to clarify that, because the site itself, it's not covered by river or tidal flooding. There is limited surface water flooding, but there's no requirement for an FCA under the Technical Voter Note 15, which is the one from 2004, when this application was, because this application was registered before the necessary date for the new TAN to apply. And yeah, I think that's really it in the first instance. And just in terms of Councillor Cave's point about why this is the most appropriate site, obviously in terms of officer's determination of the application itself, this is the application that's before us. You know, we have to consider it on its merits in terms of this particular site. The officer's report does detail why it's considered to be an appropriate site in terms of its relationship to existing built form and what have you. And yeah, I think in terms of looking at other alternative sites, I'm not aware that there's one that's available to serve this particular need. And lastly, in terms of the need within Sigingstone itself, that isn't granular detail which our affordable housing colleagues can provide. You know, the need we're given is that which covers the ward. As the agent has correctly said, there is a need identified within Landau ward itself, and that is currently for 28 houses on the most up-to-date information I have. And obviously, then I'm not saying this is the reason why, you know, necessarily something which holds significant weight. There's also an identified significant need within neighbouring wards as well. That's just those points of clarification for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rob. Right, we can now move on to the debate itself. Councillor Cave, I believe you're the local member, therefore you have the right to speak first.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. I hope you can hear me. I think earlier on our sound wasn't particularly great, but I'll do my best to be as loud as I can. So we've already heard there's very good reasons why this application should be rejected. Some of these reasons have already been spoken about, but I'd like to focus the committee's attention on several important issues. Firstly, please note that the report is written by planning officers employed by the council, and this council is under pressure to reduce their adversely inflated housing waiting list, not because there is a housing need in Sigingstone or very much in the ward of Landau itself, but because of far wider pressures. We have an LDP, and the officers in the committee often reject the applications because they fall outside of our local development plan. However, in this case, it would appear that the countryside, once again, is up for grabs. It'd be really lovely, actually, while I'm talking, if you would be able to put that lovely photograph of that field up that you had on earlier, because it will be, if you pass this application, probably the last time you'll have the opportunity to see it in that form, which actually is very sad. So, what I would like to say, I went past the site this morning because we very rarely here now have site visits, but I popped down there, it was pouring down with rain, and what was already happening was the road was flooded. And the cows that were actually grazing in the field at the time were quite muddy and quite wet. But the concern was that there was water already rushing off that field. And as has already been said, we're likely now to add sewage to that. So it's farmland, and I see no such reason why it shouldn't remain farmland. It's interesting to note that we haven't really, as a council, looked at, is there an alternative site to this? If there's a need, which I don't agree there is, but would there be an alternative site? What we've just done is we jumped on a bandwagon, somebody's come forward, said, look at this, it doesn't fit very well with your LDP, it doesn't fit with the curtilage of the village, but actually it might meet your crisis that you have with housing at the moment. I also do not agree that with the rural housing officer, I do not agree that we have this real evidence. You know, what we've got is a waiting list, and I don't think that actually provides us with very accurate data at all, not even current, actually. Furthermore, the report suggests that there's been just 7 new social housing units built in the Landau ward. In fact, the number of rural exception schemes passed by this very committee has been far greater. In fact, if you look at the data, it's actually 129. In 2018, we had a rural exception development in UNE of 5 houses. They were actually 5-bedroom houses. In Cynllunio, this very committee approved the building of 64 dwellings, of which 16, 25%, were social housing. In Llangarn, again, this committee approved Timbers Green with 40 dwellings, of which 14 were socially rented units. This committee also approved a further rural exception development just next door to Timbers Green in the very same road called Court Canna. Here, 13 units of social housing were built. There has also been, again on the same stretch of road, but just outside the ward boundary where it abuts, there's been 13 affordable units built to house farm workers. I think you will agree that there have been a lot of housing development in this very small ward with less than 2,000 people. In order for this application to be considered within the planning legislative framework of building in the countryside, this committee must be convinced that there is a need for another rural exception development. But you can see that the ward already has a significant amount of this type of property. In fact, I know in terms of the Coinston social housing scheme, a person was housed from outside the Vale. And in the Clangarn social housing in Court Canna, we saw people move from the social housing in Timbers Green next door to the newly developed Court Canna. Hardly a genuine need for more social housing locally. I believe the need for social housing in Sigingstone is very overinflated and not proven, and that we already have rural exception sites in the ward that would make this site not really valid for us because of that. And even if there was this need, which we don't think there is, building on this site outside of our LDP and outside of the curtilage of the village, again, is inappropriate. From the figures of the new development ward, 40% has been social housing and all has been built on greenfield sites in the countryside. So, I want you to understand, lots have been spoken about here, and I'm going to try and summarise.
Summarise now, please.
Yeah, I'd like to summarise. There is an issue I'd like to bring to everybody's attention that hasn't been mentioned already.
You've had 5.5 minutes. You should have.
We have a beaver population in Sigingstone that has not been looked at in the report. This beaver, there has already been 2 sightings of beavers, and I would ask that because of that, we adjourn this particular application so that the beaver situation can be properly observed by our officers.
Thank you, Councillor Cave. You're well over your time. Are there any other members of the committee now who would like to address the committee? Councillor Ernest first.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Cave has put forward a good number of very valid points. So I can only add very little to it. Firstly, I'm not convinced that the housing data for the ward is reliable. The problem we have in the Vale is if you say how many people would like a council house because they can't afford a private sector dwelling, lots of people put their hands up, sign a bit of paper, and on the list they go. And suddenly we've got 3,000 or 4,000 people looking for social. I won't call them council housing. They're not social housing, but we have huge numbers. And so if I were a housing officer, I'd say I've got 3,500 people on the waiting list. I've got X number of communities. I've got to divvy this up so that we get an appropriate number of dwellings in each community so that everybody is happy. Well, I don't think the villagers of Sigingstone are happy. Certainly I'm not happy. And I mean, I'm looking at the map, the chart on page 107, where the association has 0.582 of a hectare, but they also own the entire field, which is what, roughly 3 times that. And although we can't forecast what might happen in the future, my feeling is that they wouldn't have bought a field of, we'll call it 1.5 hectares, if there wasn't the possibility of future development on the site. But of course, we as a committee cannot go with that. And what we haven't talked about is the impact on the village. An additional number of houses in the village is a lot. I know Sigingstone reasonably well. I used to go there on Best Kept Village competition entries a few years back. Lovely little village. And as the first speaker rightly said, there's no hotel there. There's no shop. There's no this, no that, no the other thing. My feeling, Mr. Chairman, is that most people living in social housing want those facilities. They're not happy to be stuck, we'll call it, in the countryside. They don't like that. They actually want to be near a bus so they can go shopping. They would like a local shop, ideally. They'd like some community facilities, which appear to be lacking. And I think it would be very wrong of us to agree this application. For that reason, Chairman, I will be not supporting this application this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. Rob, do you want to address anything that's been raised at the moment, or would you like to hear some more
I can cover. I'm
I've
not sure I'm going to
I've
cover
got
all
three
the
more hands
points,
up.
certainly. Okay. Well, do you want to come back to me in a minute then, please?
Four. I've got four more hands up. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Come back to me in a minute. Thanks.
Okay. In that case, the next hand I see is Councillor Perry.
Hi, yeah, good evening. And on a positive note, it's good to see someone's actually proposing to build a bungalow, because we're losing more and more bungalows because people want to build a second or third story on them. So that is one positive. And then we come to planning in the Vale of Glamorgan. So I have got a resident who, due to housing affordability, wishes to build their own home in the garden of a relative. Now, it's a very large garden, and you could build 4 or 5 houses in this garden, but they wish to build one dwelling. They cannot get planning permission. And the reason being is, one, it's outside of a settlement boundary. So even though it is garden, it is classed as countryside, and it's classed no differently to a field with cows, sheep, or arable farming. So it's exactly the same because it's outside a settlement boundary. That's where Sigingstone is. The other reason is it is 1.6 kilometres from the bus stop on the A48, where there's a bus service every 30 minutes from early morning to late at night. So that's another reason he can't build. I have got a brownfield site in Bombleston where the landowner cannot get planning permission. It is 700
Councillor Perry,
metres.
can we stick to this application rather than any other applications?
I'm sorry you don't understand planning, Chair, but I wish to finish this because it is directly relevant to planning policy.
It isn't. You can raise this matter with officers at a separate time. As ward councillor, this is not addressing this application.
Okay, right, if I may speak. Right, the application we're looking at is 2 kilometres from the nearest bus stop along a dark country lane. A planning permission was not permitted in Bombleston because it's 700 metres along a dark country lane. So there's a comparison there. Why is this one allowed, but the one in Bombleston not allowed? In Wenvo, and may I read the reason for, it's a very, very quick determination as to why a dwelling which benefits from a restricted road 20 mile an hour on a lit road was not permitted. May I read that? Because it's directly relevant to this one.
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you. Right, so the reason for denying planning permission for a house which is 600 metres from a school, 600 metres from a shop, and 450 metres from a bus stop along a lit country lane with a 20 mile an hour speed limit was by virtue of the distance and substandard walking route between the application site and the closest settlement, which is Wenvo, public transport service, transport and services, which I say 450 metres to the bus stop, and the bus service is every half an hour, not every hour is in Sigingstone. Future occupiers of this dwelling would likely be highly reliant on the private car. Consequently, the development would not support the principle of locating new residential development in sustainable locations, where occupiers have genuine choice of travel modes. The development, therefore, would conflict with policies SP1, delivering the strategy, MD1, location of new development, MD2, design of new development of the Vale of Glamorgan, adopted a local development plan 2011, as well as national policy identified within Planning Policy Wales Edition 12. Now, that was written 6 months ago by the same officers who seem to want to build 2 kilometres plus along dark country lanes in Sigingstone. So that there's a huge discrepancy there, and I think that does need to be pointed out, and it is very relevant to what we're talking about today. I've had a quick look at the bus timetables to Sigingstone. The last bus in the evening from Cowbridge leaves at 7:32 p.m. If you're heading home from Lantwick Major, it's 6:59 p.m. your last bus home. Okay, and your first bus in the morning arrives in Cowbridge at 7:21 a.m. I think it's the other direction. It's even later. It's 8 a.m. the earliest you can get to Lantwick Major. So if you're going to work in the morning, you better not be going by bus for an 8 o'clock start or 8:30 start even. So it is very, very, very restricted. I'm not quite sure how long it would take to walk down the dark country lanes from Sigingstone to the bus stop, but a lot of people won't walk 2 kilometres. So there's a lack of consistency there. And I think it's really, really important that we as a planning authority are in some way consistent, because there is an affordability problem. Self-build is one way of
Councillor
reducing
Perry,
crime.
that's your 5 minutes. If you could sum up quickly, please.
I think you used most of my 5 minutes. So yeah,
I dispute that. Stop now. That's rude. That's rude and insulting. Stop now. Next speaker, Councillor Wilson. You had your hand up.
Thank you very much. Will Councillor Perry, will you come off the screen, please? Thank you. Just a few points here. I mean, obviously, if you read page 96 and page 97 of the report, you get a good basis of where we are in terms of our housing need. And if you can see on the community of Llandau, which I know this is the bigger area than Sigingstone, or Sigingstone is part of this board, because I'm sure it is, because we're a local member, is the member for Llandau. And clearly, we have got a need of 28 properties within the community of Llandau, which I don't think anyone can really dispute. We've got a need in Clanwick Major 459, in Cowbridge of 367, 90, and that amounts to this part of the Vale of 916 properties. And we're looking at 10 in Sigingstone. And that's the context I like to put this into. The other context is obviously you're talking about drainage, for example. It seems as though all the residents in this area rely on their own drainage. Admittedly, that's probably a cesspit, but nevertheless, the provision on this area now of housing is a communal scheme, in the sense that it be maintained and managed by Narev Housing Association. And I think in some ways that is a better way of doing things than doing individual properties with their own drainage and those sort of issues. So clearly I think that is sustainable given the local context. And I think local context is vital. If you look at the map of the development, although people say it's outside the settlement boundary, it's not exactly that far away from the settlement boundary, to be quite honest. We're looking at page 88. Although admittedly I got no scale, it doesn't indicate to me it is well far out of the village curtilage as I can see. I mean, clearly, you know, we do need developments. Some of the comments I've heard from other members are regrettable because they seem to regard people in social housing as somewhere from outer space. They're part of our communities. We know lots of people from social housing. An awful lot of us come from social housing, including myself. And I think it's regrettable that some people make comments about people from social housing as though they are different from the rest of us. And I think that is disgraceful. I can't see, you know, their issues. An awful lot of people in social housing use the car. They use ways of getting, they're on the internet. They can have shopping delivered to them. They do use public amenities. They're like us. They're like everyone else. So really, I see no real reasons what I've seen today so far to object to this scheme.
No, you can't. There is no.
Well, I've heard. That's not a comment.
No. Can we go on? Councillor Aviat is next.
Oh, hello. Yes, Councillor Wilson has said a lot of what I wanted to say, but I would like to reassure people who live in that area that the people who are going for these houses will probably have a big connection because we like to keep communities together. I mean, you might not have experienced anybody yourself, any of your relatives or yourself homeless, but I'm sure they will be local. And I mean, you don't know who your neighbours' children are, and they might not want to be staying at home or whatever, but nobody likes change. And I just want to say, we're not that bad, people, because I live in a council house myself, and don't worry, they'll be all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aviat. Councillor Payne, your hand is up next.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up again on a few comments. I am picking up a lot of prejudice towards people who would be in social housing from some of the speakers, which, as the Cabinet member says, is regrettable. So there are a few issues around adverse inflated housing lists. As somebody who works in homelessness, I would say it's not adversely, and there are more hidden homeless than you actually realise. So it's not adversely inflated. I would say it's underestimated. If you look at the different kinds of homelessness, we are in great housing need. And for me, I will be supporting this application. It does look like a lovely development. And there's another issue around stereotyping who would be in affordable housing. How do the people in Sigingstone now get to and from the village and to and from the outside world? How do they access it? Can I question that, please? Because it makes no difference whether you're in affordable housing or private housing. This is just about providing people homes. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much. Hello, are you able to hear me? Is there an issue? Just for people to be aware at home, we are waiting to ensure that everybody who is here in the public gallery is able to understand the interpreting. I hope that this is working at this point. Yes, everybody's okay? Great, I'll begin. Thank you for your patience. This is an interesting discussion, and I disagree with some of the conversation by a number of individuals who have some sort of class war, class discussion going on. We're not here for that. We are here to discuss planning this afternoon, and I'm sincerely in two minds about the application that is before us today. I have a number of concerns, some which have been expressed previously by other people. To start with, it is disappointing that there was no official opportunity for us as councillors to visit the site. As Councillor Cave said earlier, the site visits have become few and far between by now, and I don't understand why she didn't invite us all to come along to the site for this purpose before this application happened. In accordance with what Councillor Cave said, I went over to the site earlier today. People know that I do tend to take public transport, but on this occasion I had to use my car because it is so far from the 321 bus path, which serves the area between Llanilltyd and Bridgend. It's already a car-dependent settlement as it is, and anybody who goes to live in Sigingstone will need a car in order to have any sort of normal life. This, in my opinion, goes counter to how we expect people to travel, and it is not sustainable. So this is a problem to me. The lack of information and detail about sewage is also a problem to me. NRW has been consulted 3 times, and we are still being told that there will be things written in the Kemp plan, and this creates problems for me also. The other side of the argument, of course, no, actually, just to confirm on that point, it's a problem for us that our data on a ward level which includes the individual, it includes Tregolen, Trace and other areas. It includes a lot of different areas and not Sigingstone on its own, which is a problem because we have a certain point that we need to have within a village, but we don't have the ward data that is good enough to analyse for this. And the other side of the coin, of course, is that Sigingstone is not so far from Llynlltyd Fawr either. So on a broader level, obviously there are people who perhaps would want to move into Sigingstone because despite the discussion about the lack of facilities and so forth, it's a nice area and that's why people do live there for decades. I'm very grateful to people for raising a number of points with me and for communication from the citizens of Tresigin in the week, who have made the points, who have raised the concerns that I share. As I said, I went to the site today. It is such a place, if you're going to build anything additional, that is where you would do so in Sigingstone, because it's very natural. It's a natural extension to the village, the hamlet that already exists. But once again, it is a problem every time. If we're looking at the rural vale, if you are going to add, where exactly would you add to ensure it's in the most appropriate place? So as I say, I am in two minds. I would like, because of the people who choose to live there, the people who are on that Homes for You list, of course, they are of course aware that what life in the rural vale is like, and they wouldn't expect it to be like living in a city or living in a town or living even over in Llynlltyd. They decide they want to live here. So does this have a very negative effect on the hamlet if it is built? Well, I'm not sure. Is it perhaps a great opportunity to note the lack of facility and public transport and the questions that I have about sewage? Once again, I'm unsure, and I would like to hear more, especially from the officer, in terms of the responses to those questions about sewage and not just sending this on to the next step, to the next stage. My last point, this is outside of the current LDP. It's not in the RLDP either, that we have at consultation at the moment. So there are two other sites, I believe, in the present wards in Tregolen, and they are also included under building rural areas. And if the council were serious about this, I know that we have to look at this as an individual site and an individual application, but if the council was earnest about this, then why isn't it included in the RLDP, which is before us? Why isn't it? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I see Councillor Kay, if you have your hand up, is this a point of order because you've went well over your time before and were quite argumentative, and I don't wish to call you again.
I don't wish to be argumentative at all, Chair. I was going to just come back and answer Councillor Johnson's question, if you wanted me to, about not being in the our revised LDP.
I think officers will answer that. Thank you. Councillor Perry, I don't propose to call you again either, as you went well over your time and were quite rude. No. I'm sorry, Councillor Perry, but I've said no.
I'm raising a point of order that the chair is out of order, insulting members like myself. There's been insults on members.
You can take this up, please, with the monitoring officer outside this meeting. Can you take him off?
This is disgraceful. Take him off, please.
This is just.
Right, moving on. Rob, do you want to come back now on all the discussion and debate that we've had so far, please?
Yeah, sorry, the video on the seems to have paused, but anyway, hopefully you can hear me okay. Just confirm.
Yes, we can.
Okay, lovely. Okay. In terms of some of the points, it's kind of where to start really. So, I mean, just in terms of the location and some of the points made by Councillor Perry with regard to other schemes, obviously, I don't know the full details, which applications it relates to, what the particular circumstances of those cases were. I think it's just important to note that this is it's an exceptions policy. So whilst in some other instances it may not be appropriate for market dwellings or similar to be in some of those locations, similarly, this is the thrust of the LDP, and policy MD10 particularly allows for exceptions to the normal instances. For instance, the part of the SPG, which I read out earlier, does note within smaller rural communities where it would not normally be appropriate to develop housing because of limited availability of facilities and services, there may be circumstances where the provision of housing to meet a local need outweighs these factors. And I think that's the balance that officers have drawn. In terms of the facilities that are in Sigingstone and the proximity to bus services, I'm not going to debate those particularly, because the services in Sigingstone are what they are, and the bus services are where they are. Like I touched on earlier, though, there is the availability of things like school transport. There are facilities within the village, and similarly, additional housing would support those services. So, I think it's just very important to just kind of bring it back to the fact that policy MD10 does allow for affordable housing, and it is an exception policy to possibly some of the normal consideration of proximity and sustainability that are brought up in other instances. I mean, it's also very difficult to consider the ream of different examples that were provided. And similarly, in terms of the comments from Councillor Cave about previous developments in the ward or exceptions, it's not to say that I don't think anything in the report says that there haven't been similar affordable housing schemes elsewhere. I think the one in Awenny, just to touch on, I think was relating to enabling development, I think relating to a listed building. So that is materially different. But some of the other ones noted, obviously Landau is a relatively big ward. There's lots of settlements, and obviously there is a need for these types of units across the ward. So, and indeed, notwithstanding any of that, there is still a need that needs to be met in the ward as per that council's housing figures. So I think that's how I kind of come around to some of these things. Obviously there's all manner of other mechanisms and things that could be considered in the round about who lives there in terms of local lettings policies or similar things that would be matters for our housing section and and the affordable housing provider themselves. In terms of a foul drainage, I can't profess to be a particular expert of the exact ins and outs of the foul drainage apparatus, but I think all we can really say to members is that we pass that information on to technical consultees who consider it on their merits. It's not to say, again, just to reiterate, there is a kind of a process that follows. Obviously, mains drainage is the preferred. Where there's not mains drainage available, there are other mechanisms that are available to dispose and deal with that type of sewer. And I don't think Natural Resources Wales would, it's not their thing to say, oh, we'll just deal with it later on. There was a real objection to some form of foul drainage apparatus that was being proposed, they would say. So I just would like to kind of give members comfort that technical consultees and statutory consultees have been consulted in all these regards, and their comments have been taken into account. I think although there isn't maybe the I don't believe there's the full kind of whistles and bells and technical specification of the exact unit that would be put there, but clearly there is a separate licensing procedure that Natural Resources Wales administer, which would make sure that any development of the site would not cause these problems. And that is a function of theirs. That's not a planning function. We have to be advised by them to make sure that they consider that any applications such as this comply with our relevant policies, which are, in this case, would be policy MD7 about environmental protection. And if we weren't satisfied that, again, NRW are satisfied, then we wouldn't be we wouldn't be putting this before members with a positive recommendation. So, yeah, I think that covers the majority of the points that I would like to address for now, and I hope that helps in some of the deliberation of some members. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Some members have indicated their opposition to this, so there's clearly a need for a vote. So we'll go for a recorded vote as per normal. Councillor Ernest, do you have your hand up again? Why is that?
Yes, I was just going to say if we have a vote and have a recorded vote, that would be helpful. And perhaps I could just say, Chairman, that we're here as a planning committee tonight, not a social services committee, and we should be voting on planning grounds, not on social services.
Absolutely, yes. But we will, Councillor Cave.
Yeah, just a point of clarity. I don't think it was covered in what was just said, was about why it wasn't in our revised LDP. Well, actually, it was in our local development plan of 2017. And when the inspector looked at it, the inspector threw this site out.
Thank you. Rob, do you want to respond to that? Do you have information on that? Or Liam? Liam,
Chair, I'll just respond on the point about the LDP. So obviously, we are going out to consultation on the replacement local development plan in due course. Obviously, the strategy is to allocate sites in sustainable locations, but I think we have to have regard to those sites will be a makeup of market housing and social rented affordable housing. That would be a percentage of the market housing. The policy that we have in the LDP, and it's one that's proposed in the replacement local development plan as well, relates to affordable housing, which is 100% affordable housing. So this is to meet need in rural areas. So we have to have a policy that deals with need in rural areas, and we will allocate as many properties as we can throughout the Vale in sustainable locations. But obviously we've got to consider need across the Vale, and we've got to consider need in these local wards. So we can't give weight to the emerging local development plan as it stands. We have to consider the policy before us. Now, I think Rob has covered off the key issues in terms of deliberating. It is a balance, and I think we have to accept there's a balance there in terms of obviously the wording of the actual policies is what we have to take account of. And Rob touched on it earlier with the SPG. It talks in the SPG about normally you wouldn't allow housing in these areas outside settlement boundaries, and particularly market housing. But in this instance, there is a policy which allows exceptions, and the exception is it's going to be 100% affordable housing in perpetuity to meet local need. Now, I know there's concern about what local need means and why is that need not looking at Sigingstone, but the data we have is the data from the housing team, Homes for You team, which says there's 28 units across the Landau ward that are needed. So that's the evidence we have as officers. We have to give weight to that. Obviously, the comment about sustainability has been explored, but when you read the wording of the policy, it says the development has reasonable access to the availability and proximity of local community services and facilities. Now, obviously, the word reasonable, it does have access to facilities. Yes, it doesn't have access to every facility that you would wish for, but we live in a world where people do use cars, and we have to acknowledge that, and we have to give weight and significant weight to affordable housing. I think that's where we are with this application. To be fair, so it is a balance, and I accept that. So pass back to Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. Given that, we are ready to go for a vote. I move officers' recommendations.
And I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. We are voting either for or against officers' recommendations or abstaining when the vote is live. Happy to start that, Chair. Yep.
Vote has started now, committee, just to let you know. Yes, it is.
Against is the minus, yes.
Apologies, Councillor. Yeah, minus for against, +4, and then obviously
right, all votes are in. The vote is carried 10-7.
Do you want the list of people up?
Yeah, I'll put that up now.
Bringing up the individual members now, Chair.
I propose a 5-minute comfort break, partly for my own comfort. So we'll return at 17:30.
Right. Check and the feed is coming through now, Chair.
Make sure we're back online.
Just making sure the feed is working. Right. In that case, thank you for your indulgence for that 5 minutes. We come on to our final matter on the agenda today, which is BSW Holdings Limited Units 6062 Dyffryn Business Park, application 2023/00815/FUL. We again have one speaker on this, who is the applicant or the representative. Can you, Rob, I think this is one of yours again. Can you please introduce the matter?
Certainly can. Yes, thank you. Can I have the slides up, please? Okie dokie. So the application site is located within Dyffryn Business Park, adjacent to 3 former air hangars located within the park, as you can see to the right-hand side of that aerial photograph before you. The site lies approximately 600 metres from the nearest settlement boundary of Sigingstone to the southeast, within basically within the countryside, obviously, but within the allocated retail site. The site does fall within the Dyffryn Business Park employment site as identified within the LDP. The application, sorry, next slide, please. The application is for the erection of a new building within the grounds of the business park adjacent to the existing hangar. The building would contain 3 commercial units alongside associated parking and EV charging points. The building itself would measure circa 1,900 square meters in floor space and will contain units for B2 and B2 and B8 uses, as well as a small office ancillary to the main uses. The proposal seeks to slightly reconfigure the internal road layout to provide direct access to hangar 61 on the eastern side of the site. Members are also advised that works on site have commenced without the benefit of planning permission and are getting to a point where they are substantially complete. This is, something that has been monitored by our enforcement section whilst this application has been determined. So as I noted previously, the site is identified as an existing employment site. Dyffryn Business Park as per policy MD16 of the local development plan. The land has been allocated to ensure that an appropriate range and choice of land is available throughout the authority to meet future employment needs. Policy MD14, which relates to new employment proposals, states that on existing and allocated development sites, development proposals for B1, B2 and B8 employment uses, such as this one, plus complementary ancillary uses will be supported. Noting this and the site's proximity to other industrial development and sites, it's considered the proposals are in accordance with the provisions of policy MD14 and MD16, reflecting their context, and therefore the proposals are acceptable in principle. The officer's report provides a full appraisal of the salient planning matters, which I'm not going to repeat in detail now. And these include, but are not limited to, the visual impact, impact upon neighbouring properties, highway impact and ecological matters, all of which were found to be acceptable. In terms of design, the proposals are viewed in the context, sorry, next slide please if we can, viewed in the context of similarly designed and scaled buildings and considered to suitably assimilate within their context. It might be useful actually, if we can go to the next slide, I think there's a photo of, so that's what the building would look like in 3D profile when it's finished. We can go to what I think is the very last one. Sorry, it just shows the building that's largely been constructed in relation to the existing hangar building, which is on the site. So just for members' information, that's what the building currently looks like, and obviously its relationship to the existing hangars. Similarly, whilst the proposals are also set a significant distance from residential uses and they're therefore not expected to result in any unacceptable impacts, so that's obviously something which this site has in its favour. In terms of highways, no objections have been received from the council's highway section, subject to a suitable signage strategy, which will be secured by way of planning condition. The proposals are supported by ecological information, including that related to great crested newts, enhanced hedgerow along the southern edge of the site, and suitable ongoing management, which is again has been found to be acceptable by relevant consultees, including our ecologist and Natural Resources Wales. Therefore, in kind of general planning consideration terms, the site is, the development is considered to be acceptable. Just for members' information, the applicant has also agreed to pay the relevant planning obligations relating to the development. These are financial contributions towards sustainable transport, training and development, and public art, whilst there's an in-kind provision of open space within the wider environs of the site, which will be secured by condition. So the resolution would be, or officer's recommendation is to approve the application subject to the applicant entering into a legal agreement, and therefore that is our recommendation to members. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you, Rob. We have, as I said earlier, one speaker on this, Mr. Scarborough, James Scarborough. Come on screen. Hi, James. You have 3 minutes from when you start.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today as the agent on behalf of the applicant for the scheme. Without repeating the content of the report before you, officers have closely and carefully assessed the planning application and have found that the proposal is wholly acceptable. The principle of the development is considered to be acceptable by officers, given it is in accordance with both national and local planning policies. To support the planning application, extensive assessment work was submitted by the applicant. Through consultation with both internal and external consultees, the scheme has been found to be acceptable in all respects, including design, neighbouring amenity, highways, and biodiversity and green infrastructure, subject to appropriate conditions. There have been no technical or other objections raised by consultees to the proposal accordingly. The design, sitting and scale of the proposed building was carefully considered throughout the design process in terms of how it relates to the business park and the wider surroundings. Through the appropriate contemporary design approach adopted, it is considered that the building visually enhances the business park and is in keeping with the existing built form at the site, a view shared by officers. As set out by officers, the development will not have any unacceptable impact on the residential community or any nearby residents, given that the nearest dwelling is located over 200 metres from the site and the building will be read within the context of the business park. Highways officers have found the application to be acceptable, noting that the required visibility space can be achieved at the park's main entrance. As such, the site benefits from a suitable arrangement capable of supporting the development. Overall, the development will not present any highway safety concerns. In respect of ecology, both the council's ecologist and NRW have found the development to be acceptable. Moreover, the development will enhance green infrastructure at the site through the planting of native trees, infilling existing hedges, new hedgerow planting, and creation of wildflower habitats. It should be noted that the proposed development will bring about significant economic benefits to the local area through the creation of employment opportunities. Accordingly, the proposals will make a significant and invaluable contribution towards economic growth in the Vale. To conclude, and consistent with your officer's detailed assessment and conclusions, the development is considered to be wholly policy compliant. On this basis, officers and statutory consultees have found that the scheme is suitable and acceptable in all respects, and the application is recommended for approval accordingly. I therefore respectfully urge members to support the recommendation of your officers. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Scarborough. Do any members of the committee have any points of clarification for Mr. Scarborough? Councillor Cave.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to ask, in terms of the biodiversity reports and of which you speak, it's become apparent at tonight's meeting that there are and have been sightings of beavers in this area. Can you tell me, did you know that that was the case? And if you didn't, what would you have done to protect beavers on this particular location? What sort of research would you do?
No, so we're not aware that there were any beavers in the area. Obviously, extensive ecology surveys were carried out to support the application, all of which have obviously been assessed and considered acceptable by both the council's ecologist and NRW. Of course, should have obviously they had been found, then the suitable mitigation would have been presented and agreed with the council. But like I said, that hasn't been a consideration through this application.
Thank you, Mr. Scarborough. Perhaps we can ask the ecology officer and LRW for their view on beavers in the Llandau area for future reference. Thank you. Right. Any members of the committee have any comments to make on this? Councillor Cave, you're the local member. Do you have anything you wish to say? No, you don't. Does any member of the committee have anything they wish to say? In that case, I accept silence as agreement.
I'd like to move officers' recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I'll agree with that. Support that. Are there any objections? Are there any? I see no hands anywhere on the screen or in the room. In that case, officers' recommendations are accepted. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your time. Sorry about the 5-minute break, but it was necessary, I assure you. Old man's bladder, I blame. Have a good evening.